Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
So let's start off by talking a little bit about Enbridge Energy, what it is that you guys do, who you're about, and just maybe talk a bit about that.
Sure. Thanks for having us, Michelle. Enbridge is we look at ourselves as basically an energy transportation company. Through Wisconsin, we're known more for transporting crude oil through the state and servicing the the refining needs of the state, as well as down into Chicago. But really, from a broader picture, we're big into renewable energies.
Mm-hmm.
We're also big into natural gas as far as transmission, processing, and things like that. And recently, we've completed a merger with Spectra Energy, which has really added to that natural gas footprint as well.
Nice. Okay. So a little bit of discussion on certain topics that we're going to get into today. Some people are saying that Enbridge is building a new pipeline in Wisconsin that goes by the name of Line 61 Twin or Line 66. Can you address
Sure.
that point?
Yeah, sure. As far as the Line 66 project or Line 61 Twin project goes, we do not have a project on our horizon at this time. We did some early survey work back in 2014 and 15. Gives us a bit of a baseline of the potential right-of-way. At this time, the market conditions have changed. We've had a project that has been canceled called our Sandpiper project, which was going to feed crude oil from North Dakota into Superior.
Sure. Yeah.
And with that cancellation, there's not a market driver for a new pipeline system.
Okay, sounds good. Paul, can you tell me a little bit about your economic footprint here in Wisconsin? How many people do you employ? What is your taxes paid? Just a little bit elaborate on that point for us.
Sure. I believe our Wisconsin full-time employment right now is approximately 350 to 375 Enbridge direct employees.
Yep.
Also, there's hundreds at any given day of contractors who are performing various activities, small projects, maintenance type work for us across the length of the state.
Sure.
We have basically three main offices, I'll call it, in the state of Wisconsin. Trent and I are both out of our Superior, Wisconsin office, but we also have a pipeline maintenance shop, is what we refer to it, in the Vesper, Wisconsin area,
Okay.
and also in the Fort Atkinson area. So those are maybe the three centers of larger offices across the state, but then also there's people kind of in between those offices, obviously at the various pump stations
Sure.
along the way.
Now, you guys have invested a lot into infrastructure here in Wisconsin. Could you speak a little bit to that point?
Sure. Yeah. Really, over the last couple of years, when we've recently expanded our Line 61 pipeline that was put in approximately 2007. We've invested about $1.5 billion in that project in total over the last couple of years. That's now operational, and the construction work is complete. And so we've been moving product through that pipeline, the expanded pipeline now for well over a year.
There's been some discussion that Enbridge has new powers of eminent domain and new regulatory powers. Is that accurate? Can you talk a little bit on that?
Sure. No, there hasn't, Michelle. In last year's state budget, there was a provision that had one minor wording change in the code. It essentially changed business corporation to business entity. So it was a very small change, updating decades-old legislation to bring it up to more current standards of how organizations are organized, if you will, in the state of Wisconsin. I want to make sure that people are aware of that. It really didn't change the authority for companies, pipeline companies like Enbridge.
Sure. Yep.
Didn't really change any authority, or it did not change the regulatory process at all. The state level processes and federal processes are still the same prior to this amendment being passed.
Great. Thank you for that clarification. Trent, can you tell us how much does Enbridge pay in taxes?
Sure. Generally, we've been paying anywhere from $26 to $28 million a year in taxes.
Okay, and how much have you guys invested in infrastructure here in the state?
Well, over the last couple of years, we've invested $1.5 billion in our facility upgrades on one of our core pipelines that traverses through the state. So certainly a large investment, a lot of good paying jobs. We're certainly enjoyed at that time by people in the state. And we continue to invest millions of dollars every year just on our general maintenance throughout the state as well.
So can you tell me a little bit, how important are oil and petroleum products to our everyday quality of life, both here in Wisconsin and across the nation, and how does that impact our economy as well?
Well, I think if people would reflect on the petroleum products that they use every single day, they would be astonished to learn that it's everything from the fuel in your car to the roads to your cell phone, elements of your cell phone, things around your house. And I think if people, there are the people that believe that we just need to keep it in the ground. However, those people are the same ones that realize those same benefits and take advantage of them. So, we're trying to make sure that people are well informed of the necessity, but I think it's also important for people to understand that we also see renewables as a future platform that we're all going to rely on. And so I think that is a very exciting thing from our perspective. So I think it would behoove people to do a little bit more education and see what they rely on every single day that is petroleum based.
And Michelle, I think it's important for people to recognize too that the United States still is the largest consumer of petroleum products in the world. Today, our estimates of production are approximately half of our needs are developed in the U.S. only. So that gap, that half of our daily consumption, needs to come in. And a lot of the petroleum that Enbridge transports here in Wisconsin and throughout the Midwest is either derived in the oil fields in North Dakota, in the Bakken, or in Western Canada. So these are North American produced resources that are serving North American markets. So I think it's important for people to keep that in mind, that this growth that we've seen in the last several years for North American produced crude oil is really displacing that crude oil that traditionally we have brought in from foreign countries, from overseas, and the political climates that may be associated with that.
Right, great. So can you tell us a little bit more about the grant opportunities that Enbridge provides to communities that you're involved with? I think that's a great story to tell. And
yeah,
if you could elaborate on that, that would be
sure.
nice.
Sure. We've really got two main grant opportunities that communities can participate in. We have our community investment program, which is all through our website. People can go and apply for various grants for different community projects. If it lines up with our criteria, then that's something that we can certainly explore, and we have. I think last year alone in our community investment program, we donated well over $500,000 in community investment just in Wisconsin alone. As far as the safe community grants, that's another. That's primarily there for first responder communities, your fire departments, your emergency management groups within a group of counties, that they can apply for things like upgrades to their communication system, different equipment, emergency response equipment that lines up well with what our beliefs are, and so I think last year we donated upwards about, I think, 80,000 throughout Wisconsin to the first responder communities. So.
Oh, that's great. So if people want more information on that, communities want to look more into this, they should go to your website then.
Absolutely. Yep. It's all on our website.
Okay, great.
And follow through.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about safety. How important is that to your company?
Well, it's really, it drives our daily lives, literally. When we think of safety, it's really two things. It's our communities that we operate in, and it's our employees. When we look at communities, we really it's imperative that we keep them safe, and to us that primarily means keeping the oil in the pipeline. And so we have very robust integrity programs that all of our pipelines go through. With that comes potential repair programs as well, to ensure that they stay safe. But we also look at, with our employees, they're our best asset, and so keeping the employees safe is of utmost importance to us. So we have many different safety program systems in place, and we're very proud of how far that's developed and continues to develop. It's something that we never get complacent with.
Sure. So how are these pipelines monitored? I mean, could you maybe walk us through a typical day of how that occurs within the company?
Sure. We We have a control center in Edmonton, Alberta, that all of our pipeline systems are operated out of. And so what those individuals do up there, there's several hundred people that work in that department. You have the guys who just run the systems themselves and turn off and on pumps and open valves and things like that. And then there's a lot of analysts that also, if there's something that comes up, something that's unique, they have analysts there that will also evaluate that, make the determination of whether the system needs to be shut down. On the ground level, we're in constant communication with them if there is an issue with our control center. We've got, as Paul mentioned, we've got people spread throughout Wisconsin as well as all of our operating states that can respond to any sort of anomaly in a moment's notice. So that's really the daily operations. We also have flyovers that we do on our pipeline systems that fly over the right of way and various other inspections that we take advantage of.
Sure. So, Paul, maybe you can talk to this point. So, in the event there is a release, something's been monitored and looks a little off, how is that handled? What assets do you have in place to ensure that everything is taken care of quickly and efficiently?
Well, obviously, it's immediate response if there happens to be in the unlikely incident where there happens to be a release of petroleum. It's working with the control center, as Trent mentioned, the procedures to immediately shut down that line as soon as possible and close any valves to minimize the amount of oil which might be able to escape the pipeline system. So that's step one, immediate when there's a disruption detected. But then really, I mentioned the Vesper in Fort Atkinson and Superior areas where we have our caches of emergency response equipment.
Okay.
Trailers, booms, command centers, excavators, just our own in-house equipment, if you will, to quickly mobilize and stop the spread of that release of wherever it may have happened along the pipeline system. So in addition to having our own equipment kind of cached throughout the state in convenient or logical locations, we also then rely on outside contractors who we have on retainer to help us respond depending on the size or the magnitude of a release. So there's emergency response contractors, who do this for a living, that are on call, are able to respond, are trained ahead of time in our procedures of how we would start a release response activity.
Super. So let's talk a little bit about the federal agencies that regulate what you guys do, and what is your relationship with them? How do you interact with them and go through items like that?
Sure. Yeah, so we're regulated by the Pipeline Hazardous Material Safety Administration. Also, we call it PHMSA, and they're an arm of the DOT, and so. They do frequent audits on our system. I think they do a very good job of sharing learnings throughout the industry, and that can be shared with other pipeline companies that if there's an incident or something like that. So it's a I would say a typical relationship. We're very transparent with them. We have routine audits that we're actually going through. An audit as we speak, and so we're having routine audits that we go through, and it's something that's become a way of doing business, really.
Sure, absolutely.
If I could, expand on that a little bit, Michelle. Trent mentioned PHMSA is our federal regulator, but also our day-to-day activities for maintenance, as an example, where we need to get out and dig up a piece of pipeline to take a look at it or do a repair. So there's obviously other federal agencies involved. If work is in a wetland, as an example, the Corps of Engineers has a permitting process for us to go through. Sometimes the Environmental Protection Agency gets involved for different permitting type scenarios. If we were to happen to have any new construction project, there's obviously a whole nother suite of construction type permitting that's involved from the federal level to the state level, and sometimes even down to the local county municipality level.
Okay. So, Trent, you had mentioned this initially, but can you talk a little bit about your renewable energy assets that Enbridge Energy has?
Sure.
What you're doing in that area?
Yeah, I think as I mentioned, when we look at what we do for a living, and when you look at Enbridge as a whole, we're seeing that general trend towards renewables. You take a drive through the Midwest, anywhere you see a wind farm that wasn't there a couple of years ago, and so we're a big part of that. And where we do have a large presence in North America, I think we're in Canada. We're the third largest renewable energy producer. We've recently expanded overseas, and so we've got some things in Germany and in France that we've invested in as well. So I think when you look at our whole renewables picture, we're trending upwards of probably about $7 billion over the last several
And it's
years
billion
in
with a B?
Yep.
Okay.
And in renewable investments. And we're the economies of scale are getting much more favorable. I think there was a time when renewables initially started where it was a bit more challenging to produce the renewables, but now there is better economies of scale. The general trend is going in that direction if you look at any of the statistics, and we're a big part of that, and that's something that's extremely exciting for us to kind of get into that new venture.
And we have publicly stated the $7 billion investment that Trent referred to within the next 5 years. Our company goal is to double that investment by 2020, I believe was the date. So it is one of our focus areas and probably one of our fastest growing organic sections of our business.
Okay. So if people want to learn more about Enbridge here in Wisconsin, what's the best way for them to do that? Websites, resources that are available to them?
Sure, yeah, certainly the website's very informative website that goes into the things that we talked about earlier with the grants, but also into who we are as an organization. We've got, like Paul mentioned, we've got nearing 400 employees now in the state. I think 375 plus or minus, and seeing them, talking to them, they're your kids' t-ball coach. They're you see them throughout town. They're proud of who they work for, and talk to them about their job and what we do and what they do. And they'd love to talk to the individuals in the community about it. Do a lot of outreach within our communities that we operate in, and like I said, we're certainly proud of what we do.